Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, consider subscribing. It really helps keep these stories coming. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now, sit back, relax, and let's get into the story. By the time the alert hit my phone, the storm had already turned the city into one long gray wall of water. I was on the late shift in the Rail Control Center in Midtown Manhattan, 4th floor, windowless, surrounded by screens and track diagrams. My name is Daniel Ruiz. I am a senior train dispatcher for the subway system. My job is simple when you say it out loud and complicated when you sit in my chair. I watch the network, I move trains, I keep people from dying in tunnels. At 7:42 p.m., my screen flashed a priority message from emergency management. Emergency alert, unidentified organisms. Emerging from the subways in multiple cities, initial guidance. Treat as wildlife displaced by flooding. Avoid tunnels. Report sightings to local authorities. I read it twice. Organisms. That was a strange word for raccoons or rats. The rain had started before noon. By early evening, it was coming down in steady sheets. Radar showed a stalled system over the East Coast, with bands of heavy rain moving over New York, Philadelphia, Boston, and farther south. The kind of storm that fills catch basins and chokes pump rooms. In front of me, the main wall showed a live overview of the subway network. Every line was a color-coded route, every train a small rectangle that moved one station at a time. To my right, another monitor held a grid of live camera feeds from key stations and tunnel portals. I had 2 radios on the desk, one for train operators, one for station personnel. My headset piped them straight into my ears. Dispatch felt crowded. There were 8 of us on the main row, each watching a section of the system. Behind us, supervisors stood with arms crossed, talking into their own headsets. The air smelled like coffee, stale pizza, and wet clothes. Everyone's jackets hung on the backs of their chairs, dripping onto the carpet. "Danny," said my supervisor Karen behind me. She was in her 50s, hair tied back, sleeves rolled up. "You see this?" She pointed at the weather overlay on the top monitor. "Yeah," I said. "Queens Boulevard line is already showing water alarms." "We have pump failures in Lower Manhattan and Brooklyn Heights," she said. "We are getting reports of water coming over the platforms. We are going to shut the lower levels. You will get directives in a minute. Be ready to hold everything topside." "Got it." I went back to my section. I had responsibility for a big chunk of the system. Parts of the A, C, and E lines under Manhattan, plus connections to Brooklyn. I checked the flood sensors. A row of tiny icons along the bottom of my screen showed pump states and water levels. Some showed normal levels. Others had turned amber. A few downtown had already gone red. At 7:50 p.m., a new message appeared on my central screen. Mandatory directive flagged from the top. Subject, immediate action, seal lower lines. All control desks. Suspend all traffic into deep tunnels and lower levels below designated flood lines. Close all flood doors and bulkhead doors where available. Hold trains at upper-level stations. Maintain power where safe, but stand by for grid instability. Do not authorize staff to enter tunnels unless cleared by central safety. Remain at control positions until relieved. Below that, another note. Supplemental. External agencies are investigating reports of unidentified organisms emerging from flooded stations and tunnels. Treat all tunnels as unsafe environments. Do not speculate over open channels. "Here we go," Karen said quietly. I acknowledged the directive and began rerouting trains. On my diagram, I selected tracks into deep sections and marked them as blocked. The software showed them in gray. I issued hold commands. Northbound a train, Hold at Columbus Circle. Do not proceed into the lower tube. Await further instructions. I repeated versions of that for half a dozen trains. Confirmations came back over the radio. Different voices, all tense but professional. "This is train operator Reeves on the southbound C at 86th, one voice said, holding as instructed. "Copy, Reeves," I said. "You are topside and safe for now. We will give you further routing when we have pump status." All over the room, dispatchers were doing the same thing. The map on the main wall began to freeze, trains stacked up at upper-level stations. Farther out, in Queens and the Bronx, trains still moved normally. The storm had not yet overwhelmed those sections. On another screen, the camera grid flickered. I selected a larger view of lower Manhattan stations. Fulton Street, Wall Street, Chambers. Water glistened on the tiles in Fulton. It flowed along the platform edges, running toward the drain grates. The water was not yet over the edge, but the pumps were falling behind. I switched to a camera at Old Slip, one of the lower maintenance areas near the river. That feed was already half underwater. The lens showed the tunnel mouth as a dark curve filled with brown water. "This is Park in Maintenance," a voice said on the maintenance channel. "I am at Canal Street Pump Room. We have water almost up to the equipment and the backup pump is not starting." "Park, this is Central," one of the supervisors answered. "Evacuate. Repeat, evacuate. Do not stay in the pump room. The tunnels are unsafe." "I heard the alert," she said. "You think this is real?" "Park, leave the area," the supervisor said. "We will deal with the pumps later. Get yourself to the surface." The word real hung in the air. I switched one of my monitors to the internal news channel. A scrolling banner at the bottom showed storm-driven flooding causing transit disruptions from Washington to Boston. Another line below that, emergency management investigating reports of unusual creatures emerging from storm drains and subway tunnels. The anchor used words like panic, viral videos, and unverified reports. There was shaky phone footage of something crawling out of a storm drain in Philadelphia. The camera angle was bad, the lighting worse. The thing could have been a large dog or a person or a mess of debris. I muted the news and went back to my work. At 8:07 p.m., the first real trouble hit my section. "Control, this is Operator Reeves on southbound C," Jamal said. His voice was louder. "We are between 72nd and 59th. We just lost some overhead lights, and the water is coming in faster than before. I see it against the tunnel wall." "Reeves, copy," I said. I pulled up his train. His little rectangle sat in the tunnel not far from 59th Street. The system showed reduced power in that segment. "Can you move under your own power?" "Yes, but I am getting traction warnings," he said. "Feels slippery." "Reduce speed and proceed to 59th if you can," I said. "Do not stop in standing water. You have priority. Everything else is holding." "Understood," he said, proceeding. I watched his train crawl down the line. The delay indicator counted up, 30 seconds, 1 minute, 2. Then I saw another alarm pop up. Water level high at the 59th Street lower level, pumps offline. "Reeves, this is Control," I said. "Be advised, we have water near platform level at 59th. Do you see anything ahead?" There was a pause. "Control, I see lights from the station," he said slowly. "But the platform looks wet. There are people there. They are near the columns. Some are waving. Some look like they are trying to move away from something." I switched a camera feed to 59th Street. The image jumped onto the screen. The platform was slick and reflective, a thin layer of water covering the tiles. Commuters clustered near the stairs, bags clutched to their chests. Some people stood closer to the platform edge, looking down into the tunnel. Others backed away with their hands over their mouths. At the far end of the platform, where the tunnel mouth curved into darkness, something was moving. At first, it looked like trash pushing against the flow. A dark heap bumping against the lip of the platform, then sliding back. The water around it foamed. Then the heap unfolded. A shape pulled itself up over the edge. It had 2 arms and 2 legs. The limbs moved slowly, like joints that had not been used for a long time. Its clothing clung to it, heavy and soaked. The cloth was torn in places. Skin showed through. The skin was pale in some spots and dark in others, with patches that looked swollen and broken. Something grew on the surface of its skin, small clusters of off-white and green. The head turned toward the nearest group of commuters. The mouth opened. I could not hear anything through the camera feed, but I saw people flinch. Behind the first shape, more bodies pushed up from the tunnel. They used their hands to grip the slippery platform edge, fingers spread, nails scraping on the tile. Their movements were jerky and uneven. Some dragged one leg. Some crawled on their knees at first before trying to stand. I felt Karen move closer behind me. The room went quieter. "Is this live?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. My own voice sounded more distant. "Reeves, this is Control," I said into the radio. "Stop short of the station. Repeat, stop short. Do not enter 59th. Keep your doors closed." "Control, what is happening up there?" he asked. "People are waving at me. They want on." "Do not open your doors," I said. "You will not enter the platform. This is a safety order." I watched the camera. The first figure's clothing hung from its frame. The fabric was stained with damp patches. The skin on its arms looked soft and damaged, as if it spent too long in water. Where the skin had broken, the edges were dark and irregular, not like a clean cut. I saw clusters of what looked like mold and small thread-like strands along the neck. The thing moved toward a man with a briefcase. The man backed away, slipped on the wet tile, and fell. Others tried to grab him, but they were also slipping. The camera angle did not show the actual impact clearly, but I saw the bodies tangle. People flailed. A woman's umbrella skidded across the floor. It felt like watching an accident in slow motion. My brain tried to force it into a familiar category: a fight, a confused crowd, a person having a seizure, someone drunk. The thing lowered itself over the man in a way that did not look like any normal struggle. Its head dipped down toward his shoulder. The man jerked. I forced my eyes away. "Karen," I said, "we need to close that station and cut power into that section, now." "Do it," she said. "Issue the evacuation order. Use the PA." I punched in the code for the 59th Street public address system and selected all platforms. "This is Central Control," I said. My voice went into the speakers in that station, loud and flat. "Attention. You must leave the platform immediately. Move to the nearest exit. Do not go down toward the tracks. Go up the stairs to street level now. Do not stop for belongings." On the camera, some people looked up, searching for the source of the voice. A few started moving toward the stairs. Others stood frozen, staring at the growing cluster of figures dragging themselves out of the tunnel. One of the shapes slipped and fell to the tiles. It tried to push itself up. Its hands left smears on the wet surface, but water washed them away almost at once. "Central, this is Station Agent Morris at 59th. A voice cut in. She sounded close to panic. "What is going on? We have people screaming on the platform. There's something down there. They are not acting normal. I locked my booth door, but people are banging on it." "Morris, this is Ruiz in Control," I said. "Stay in your booth. Do not open the door. Use your internal PA to tell people to head to the exit stairs. Repeat, remain in the booth." "I cannot just leave them," she said. I could hear loud bangs in the background. "They are right here." "You help them by staying alive and directing them from there," I said. "If you go out, we lose you, and they lose their point of contact. Use the phone to call upper-level staff and tell them to open every street exit." She was breathing hard. Okay, I will do what I can." Karen leaned closer. "We need to seal the south end of that station," she said quietly. "The flood door." I brought up the infrastructure overlay. Some stations had flood control doors, large steel barriers that could slide across certain tunnel entrances. 59th had one on the southbound tunnel. On the screen, it was a small icon that I could select. The system showed it as available. I clicked it. A warning popped up. "Closing this door will block all movement through this tunnel segment. Ensure area is clear." The camera said it was not clear. The tunnel mouth was full of water and bodies that should have been still and were not. "Close it," Karen said. "We cannot let whatever this is move further up the line." I clicked confirm. Somewhere below us, a steel door weighing several tons began to move. It took time. Flood doors do not slam shut, they slide on rails, closing over 30 seconds or more. The camera at the tunnel mouth shifted to another angle, showing the upper edge of the doorway. I saw it descend behind the shapes that still crawled up out of the darkness. "Reeves," I said quietly, "reverse away from the station. Put as much distance between you and that platform as you can. Keep your passengers calm. Tell them there is a flooding incident ahead, nothing more." "Understood," he said. His voice was rough. "I saw some of that. I will keep the car lights up and try to keep people focused." His train icon began to move backwards on my screen, away from 59th, back toward 72nd. The door kept closing. One of the bodies turned toward it. It moved in a clumsy stagger. It did not really look like it understood what the door was. It walked into the edge and bounced back. The door pushed it slowly as it descended. The picture froze for a moment, then resumed at lower resolution. Everything was being stressed by the storm. "System warning," a synthesized voice said over the control room speakers. "External power lines are approaching capacity, rolling brownouts likely." Another alert popped up on my primary screen. Reports from other cities. Boston. Creatures emerging from flooded station portals. Transit suspended. Philadelphia. Multiple injuries reported in subway stations after contact with unknown individuals coming from tunnels. Washington, D.C. Metro staff reporting aggressive water-exposed people in lower levels. Every message used odd phrases. Aggressive individuals. Unknown organisms. Water-exposed subjects. They all avoided one word that hovered in the back of my mind. A word from movies and late-night conspiracy forums. A word that did not fit in official memos. I forced myself back to specific tasks. There was no room for speculation. "Control, this is Park Canal," the maintenance supervisor said again. Her voice was higher now. "I left the pump room. I am on the stairs. The tunnel below is fully flooded up to the catwalk. Something is moving in the water. It is not just current. I saw a hand. I think I saw faces." "Park, keep going up," I said. "Go to the first platform with an exit. Do not stop. Tell me what station you reach." "Canal, upper level," she said, breathing hard. "I see some people here, not many. A couple of kids, a woman with a stroller. They are asking what is going on." "Tell them to leave," I said. "Use simple words. Flooding, electricity, dangerous tunnels. Get them out." In the back of the control room, someone turned on a television with the emergency broadcast channel. A monotone voice read instructions about staying away from subway entrances, storm drains, and basements. The screen showed a map of the East Coast with red shading. A new window appeared on my console. Direct contact from public health. Subject: possible biological hazard. Preliminary field reports indicate that some individuals emerging from flooded tunnels present with advanced decomposition and abnormal fungal growth. There is evidence of prior infection with a respiratory virus identified earlier this year, now showing severe tissue breakdown combined with rapid surface colonization by sewage-borne bacteria and fungi. Direct contact, bites, and contamination of open wounds present high risk of transmission. Avoid close proximity. The words tissue breakdown and fungal growth made my stomach tighten. I thought of the surfaces in the subway, every pole, every bench, every wall touched by thousands of hands each day, all of it washed now by water carrying whatever was happening down there. "Danny," Karen said, "we are going to lose more cameras. Use what you have now to get people out while you still see them. Focus on choke points, big stations." I nodded. I pulled up Fulton Street again. The water there had risen to the top of the rails and was spilling over the edge of the platform in curtains. People were moving up the stairs, faces tight. Security staff in high-visibility vests waved them along. So far, no figures were climbing out of that tunnel. Next, I checked Chambers Street. The platform was almost empty. One person in a blue hoodie moved toward the stairs slowly. Nobody else. That was good. I moved to a Brooklyn station, J Street Metrotech. There, the situation was worse. The lower platforms were crowded, and the water was at ankle level. People were trying to push onto trains that were held at the station. I hit the PA. "This is Central Control," I said. "Do not attempt to board trains. There's a serious flooding incident in the tunnels. You are safer at street level. Please move to the nearest exit staircases now. Do not run. Do not push. Just keep moving upward. Trains will not be leaving this station." Some people listened and turned toward the stairs. Others still pressed toward closed train doors. A child slipped and landed in the water. Their parent pulled them up quickly. I saw a station employee on the far platform speaking into a handheld radio. They pointed toward the exits and tried to push the crowd in that direction. My eyes hurt. I had not blinked in a while. I made myself breathe slower. At 8:25 p.m., another alarm sounded. This time it was from the power system. A red band appeared across the top of my screen. "Warning," the automated voice said. "External grid failure on feeder line 3. Switching to alternate supply. Widespread brownouts and blackouts possible." The room dimmed for half a second as the building's lights flickered. The screens stayed on, but their brightness dropped briefly. "Everyone stay on task," Karen called out. "If a screen goes down, call it out loud and tell your neighbor what you were watching." I checked my cameras. 2 feeds went dark immediately. One at a tunnel portal in Brooklyn, another at a lower-level station downtown. The rest stayed up, but some flickered with noise. "Control, this is Operator Reyes on the A line to Brooklyn," another voice said. "I am at High Street, doors closed. The platform is starting to flood. People outside are banging on the windows. They see the train ready and want in. Do we open?" "Reyes, negative," I said. "Do not open doors if you cannot move out of that station. There's a biological hazard in flooded tunnels. Keeping your passengers inside is safer than letting more in and then getting stuck." "I understand," he said. His voice shook. "They're looking at me. Some of them are kids." "I know," I said. "You keep the people you have alive. That is your job right now." On the camera at High Street, his train sat in the station, lights bright. People clustered at the doors, slapping hands against the glass. A few pounded with their fists. One woman yelled something at the driver's cab window. The water there was already up to the bottom of the doors. In the far background of the camera, at the dark end of the tunnel, I saw movement. Not the rippling of water. Something else. Something that broke the line of the surface. I switched to a different angle, but that camera went out, replaced by a signal lost message. The sense of control that my job normally gave me was slipping. I was used to knowing where every train was, where every signal was, where the problems were. Now, whole sections of the system were becoming black boxes. On my left, dispatchers for the Bronx lines were starting to see their own issues. I got a report from 149th, one of them said. Someone came out of the tunnel completely soaked, skin peeling, attacking people on the platform. That is the word they used, attacking. They had to lock the mezzanine. Police are on site, another replied, but they are stretched thin. They are calling in help from state agencies and National Guard, but that will take time. I cut back to my area. Reeves had made it safely back to 72nd and was holding there. His passengers were still inside, but the platform there was dry, and the station staff were present. "Reeves, how are your people?" I asked. "They're upset, and they want answers," he said. "I can tell them there's flooding, but someone in here saw the camera at 59th before you cut it. People are saying there are diseased people down there. They are using words I do not want to repeat. Tell them there is a serious contamination and flooding situation in some lower stations," I said. "Tell them they will be evacuated to the surface with assistance as soon as we get clearance. Tell them staying on the train for now keeps them safe from contact with contaminated water. Keep it calm and factual." "I will do my best," he said. "Do not let anyone open the doors themselves," I added. "Keep the cab key in and ready." "I know my job, Control," he said, but there was no edge in it, just tiredness. At 8:40 p.m., we got our first direct contact from federal agencies. A new voice came over the secure line to the supervisors, then Karen stepped forward. "Okay, listen up," she said to the room. "We have updated guidance from Federal Health and Security. The things coming out of the tunnels are not just sick people. They show advanced decomposition and fungal and bacterial overgrowth. They are still mobile, and they are aggressive. Field reports say they respond to sound and movement. They may not respond to verbal commands. They are dangerous at close range. They may transmit infection through bites or any exchange of bodily fluids. Our job is to keep passengers away from them and keep them inside secure spaces or move them to the surface." She glanced at a printed sheet in her hand. "Teams are moving to seal as many subway entrances and ventilation grates as possible," she said. "We are to shut down as much of the network as we can while preserving safe evacuation routes. Power will likely fail in more sections. Genesis of this is a mixture of that respiratory virus from earlier in the year and things living in sewage. That is all you need to know right now. Stay focused." She put the sheet down and looked at me. "Danny, you need to start closing off more of Manhattan," she said. "Block everything south of 34th wherever possible. We will keep a skeleton service on a few upper-level lines to move people to the surface and out of danger zones. Hand off Brooklyn lines to night dispatch once they have more generator capacity." I nodded and began marking more tunnels as blocked. My screen filled with gray segments. The map of the city's lifeline turned from an active system into a set of isolated pockets. Messages poured in. "Central, this is Station Agent Ramos at Canal Street. We got something trying to come up the track bed. I saw arms grabbing the platform. It is not right. I locked the doors at both ends of the platform. Some passengers are trapped between my locked gates and the stairs. What should I do?" "Ramos, keep the gates locked," I said. "Tell the passengers behind them to go up the stairs to another exit if they can. Do not open anything that leads back to the tracks." "They are yelling at me," he said. "They think I am keeping them from safety." "You are keeping them from something worse," I said. "Stay put. Another call came in on the emergency phone line, patched to my console. "Is this subway control?" a deep voice asked. "This is Officer King with Transit Police at Fulton Street. We have cleared most of the station, but we have multiple individuals that look severely decomposed coming out of the water on the downtown platform. My officers fired their weapons, but they keep moving unless we hit the head or spine. We are outnumbered, and we do not have enough protective gear for water contact." The words sat heavy in my ear. Weapons fired in a subway station. Decomposed bodies that kept moving. "Officer King, this is Ruiz in control," I said. "We are cutting power to that section and trying to evacuate topside. Do not go near the water. Keep your officers near the exits. Do not let these individuals get past you to the street level." "Understood," he said. "But if they keep coming, we will have to fall back." "If you fall back, close gates and barricades behind you," I said. "Whatever you can do. Think of these individuals as contaminated and highly infectious. Minimize contact." "We are already contaminated," he said quietly, then cut the line. I looked around the room. Everyone had the same set jaw. One dispatcher swore under his breath, then apologized. Karen shook her head and told him not to worry about it. Outside, thunder rolled. The building's windows rattled faintly. I could not see the sky from where I sat, but I pictured it as one continuous sheet of low cloud pressed down over the towers. Another alert popped up. "System notice, backup generator mode in effect. External supply unstable. Non-essential loads shedding. Visual systems may degrade." The camera grid flickered. One by one, some feeds shifted to low resolution. Others vanished entirely. We still had enough to see that most people in Midtown were making it to the surface. The large transfer hubs were clearing out. Then, I saw a feed from Times Square that made my stomach drop again. The north mezzanine looked normal. Bright, crowded, wet, but manageable. People were moving toward the exits in orderly lines. Announcements repeated overhead. Transit employees in vests pointed people along. The south mezzanine, however, looked wrong. There were fewer people, and they were not moving. They huddled behind a rolling metal shutter that had only been pulled halfway down. On the other side of that shutter, in the passageway leading to the lower platforms, shapes moved in the flickering light. The shapes were hunched. They walked with uneven steps. Their clothing hung heavy and dark. Some of them had visible growths along their arms and necks, pale clusters with a rough surface. Their faces, when they turned toward the camera, showed open mouths and unfocused eyes. One of them pressed against the shutter. The metal rattled. Others followed. The shutter shook on its track. The people behind it looked backward, toward the stairs to the surface. The way was blocked by more people. They were jammed tight, unable to move. Everyone had that trapped look in their eyes. The recognition that they were in a bad place it was too late to leave. I hit the PA again. "This is Central Control," I said. "At Times Square, all passengers near rolling shutters or gated passages must move toward the open exits immediately. Do not stand near closed gates. You must move toward the stairs. Upper-level staff open every available exit door. Transit police focus on keeping gate areas clear." I did not know if people could hear me over the noise. I watched the camera. 2 transit workers near the edge spotted the problem and began waving people away from the shutter. They shouted. A few people peeled away. The ones closest to the shutter stayed where they were, either unable or unwilling to move. The generator hummed under the floors. The room felt smaller. "Danny," Karen said quietly, "how long can we keep doing this if the cameras go out?" "As long as we still have radios," I said. "As long as someone is down there to tell us what they see." She nodded. "We may have to abandon parts of the system tonight," she said. "Lock them, flood them, and walk away. They may throw concrete into some tunnels after this." I thought about the miles of tracks and switches and cables under the city. Years of work. A gradual, slow improvement of a system that everyone complained about and everyone still needed. The idea of walking away from parts of it felt wrong, but there was no room for pride. Another voice piped into my headset, this time from emergency management. "Central Control, this is the City Emergency Operations Center," the caller said. "We are moving to full closure of underground transit south of Central Park and in all low-lying areas. We are sending crews to physically lock station entrances. You are authorized to close every flood door you have and kill power to any segment with water infiltration. We are also ordering all transit staff who can safely exit to head to designated surface shelters. Only essential control and operations staff should stay." "Understood," Karen said. She patched the line onto the room's speakers. "This is Karen Mills, operations supervisor at the Rail Control Center. We will begin staged shutdown. Control staff will remain until all trains are cleared or secured." I realized suddenly that I did not know where my teenage son was. He lived with his mother in Queens. He sometimes took the subway into Manhattan to see friends or go to music events. I reached for my phone, then stopped. There was no time. I pushed the thought down. "Danny," Karen said, reading my face, "do you need to call anyone?" "If I stop now, I might lose track of something that kills someone," I said. "I will call when we have fewer moving pieces." She left it at that. I focused on finishing what we had started. One by one, I checked each train in my territory. "Reeves, status?" "We are still at 72nd, he said. Station staff opened the doors on the side away from the flood-prone tunnel. They are guiding passengers up the stairs in small groups. No sign of any of those things here. People are scared, but moving. The platform is dry, and I can see daylight from the stairway." "Good," I said. "Once you are empty, secure your train and stand by. We may use it later for controlled moves." "Understood." "Reyes, at High Street status?" "We sealed the cab and kept passengers inside," he said. "A couple of inches of water in the station now, but not rising fast. We do not see anything on the tracks. We lost some lights. Station staff are working on getting us a safe route to a higher station, but they are waiting for your green light." "Hold for now," I said. "Do not move until we know what is in that tunnel beyond your station." I called maintenance again. "Park, where are you now?" "I'm on the street outside Canal," she said. "The water is running out of the stairways onto the sidewalk. They're closing the station with chains and padlocks. I have a disposable rain poncho and a mask, but I feel like I should burn my clothes when this is over." "Find the nearest emergency shelter point," I said. "The city should have them open by now. Do not go home if you are soaked in that water. You need to get decontaminated." I heard on the radio that some people who were caught in the water hours ago are already showing symptoms, she said. Fever, confusion, skin starting to break down, all that in one day. That is not natural. "It is a mix of things," I said. "The virus, the bacteria, the fungus, the sewage. Bad combination. You got out fast. That is what matters now." She exhaled into the phone. "You still in control?" "Yeah." "Stay dry," she said, and hung up. At 9:05 p.m., the first real wave of power cuts rolled across the city. This time, it was not a flicker. One entire bank of screens went black and stayed black. The overhead lights dimmed and then held at a half-brightness. The automated voice spoke again. "Generator fuel at 70%, it said. Estimated runtime under current load, 8 hours. Karen moved quickly. Shut down every non-essential monitor, she told us. Pick 3 main cameras each and keep those. Turn off auxiliary views. We need the power for the train control systems and radios. I turned off my secondary grid and kept the following. 1 camera at a key midtown station where people were still moving, 1 at a lower station near the flood doors I had closed, and 1 at a major transfer point in Brooklyn. Everything else I would have to manage by radio and audio logs. With fewer visual cues, my mind filled in gaps on its own. I pictured tunnels full of stagnant water. I imagined bodies in that water moving in ways they should not, pulled along by flow and also crawling against it. I imagined the smell, even though I could not smell anything from here. I needed facts, not images. "Central, this is emergency operations again," the voice on the secure line said. "We have National Guard units setting up cordons around major stations. They have protective suits and respirators. They are instructed to keep anything that comes out of the tunnels inside the perimeter. We are getting better video from surface-level cameras. It is consistent with what you have been describing. These are not conscious civilians. They seem to be driven by basic stimuli only: movement, noise. They do not respond to speech. They do not retreat." "Copy," Karen said. "We are doing our best to keep commuters away from them." "You are the last line before those things reach the street in large numbers," the voice said. "Your decisions tonight matter not just for your riders but for the whole city." I did not need that pressure spelled out, but it was true. The next hour became a blur of one repeated pattern. Hold trains, evacuate stations, cut power, close doors, relay instructions, repeat. By 10:15 p.m., almost every train in my section was either at a safe upper-level station or parked at a yard out in the outer boroughs. A few stragglers in Brooklyn still moved on residual power, but they were heading to elevated sections where the worst risk was wind and rain, not tunnel water. The camera at the lower station near the flood door showed something I had not expected. The water behind the door had reached almost to its upper edge. Through the small inspection window, I saw occasional bumps as something hit the door from the tunnel side. The motion was slow but persistent. Whatever was in there was still moving even under deep water. Fungal growths, like the ones described in the memo, could survive low oxygen. Some bacteria could produce gas. Viral damage to tissue could create pockets and pathways. The human body was never designed for this. Nature had twisted it under pressure from infection and chemicals. I turned away from that feed. There was nothing I could do for what was behind that door. It was sealed and would stay sealed. The Brooklyn transfer point camera showed a different scene. The platforms were empty, lights still on, water draining slowly through open grates. A forgotten bag rested on a bench. A vending machine display flickered. No movement. That station looked as if it had never known panic. I checked the midtown camera. The last wave of people was leaving. Transit workers in vests and masks guided them up the stairs. Police stood at the top, letting them through in groups. I could see daylight now, gray and heavy. The worst of the storm's wind had passed, leaving steady rain. At 10:45 p.m., Karen stood at the front of the room and made an announcement. "Most of the system is now shut down," she said. "We have a small number of trains still on the move on upper-level tracks, mostly to reposition equipment. My expectation is that within 1 more hour, all passenger service will stop. After that, we go into monitoring mode only. We will focus on keeping entrances locked and flood doors closed. A second shift of control staff is on the way, but they will be limited by road conditions. Until they arrive, nobody leaves." She looked at each of us, one by one. "You all did your jobs," she said. "I know what you saw on those cameras. We are not going to talk about it right now. We can talk about it later when this is over or under control. For now, keep your hands on the controls." Nobody spoke, but a few people nodded. Minutes stretched. At 11:08 p.m., my phone buzzed on the desk. I glanced at it, a text message from my ex-wife. "Daniel, is the subway safe? Alex was supposed to go into the city to see a friend, but his friend's parents told him to stay home. He is here in Queens. We are okay. Are you okay?" My hands shook slightly. I typed back quickly. "Stay home. Do not use subway. Do not go near station entrances or storm drains. Block basement door. I am safe for now. At work. Will explain later." I put the phone face down and went back to the console. Another system message arrived. Federal update. Multi-city incident. Similar organisms observed in New York, Boston, Philadelphia, Washington, and several smaller cities with combined sewer overflow systems. Hypothesis: virus-infected bodies trapped in sewer and subway systems have undergone rapid decomposition and colonization by sewage bacteria and fungi. Flooding events are dislodging them. Some maintain limited motor functions due to residual nerve activity and unknown interactions between infection and colonization. They are highly infectious and dangerous at close range. Avoid all flooded underground infrastructure. The language was clinical, but the reality was not. Whatever these were, they were not alive in the normal sense, and they were not just dead either. A mixed state created by disease and environment. At 11:30 p.m., we closed the last active line in my section. The trains that could be parked were parked. Any that could not be moved had their doors locked and power cut, with instructions taped to their control panels, ready for a safer day. The cameras we had left showed mostly empty platforms and water slowly draining away. A few showed locked gates with chains and signs taped to them. Station closed due to emergency. Outside, the rain began to lose some of its intensity. The rumble of thunder moved further away. The emergency broadcast channel continued to loop instructions. Stay away from subways and basements. Avoid contact with floodwater. Report sightings of unusual individuals emerging from underground. Do not attempt to help them physically. Call a dedicated hotline instead. Around midnight, the replacement control staff began to arrive, soaked and tired. They took over some positions, letting the earlier shift step away from the consoles for a few minutes at a time. I finally stood up. My chair creaked. My knees ached. I walked to the break room and splashed water on my face. I looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were bloodshot. My shirt clung to my back with sweat. When I returned to my station, my console still showed the same 3 cameras. The lower-level flood door with disturbed water behind it. The empty Brooklyn station. The Midtown entrance now quiet and deserted, except for 2 National Guard soldiers standing at the top of the stairs in protective suits. They held rifles and watched the street. Karen came over and leaned on the back of my chair. "You can rotate out for a bit if you want," she said. "Go to the observation room. There's a live feed from the Emergency Operations Center. They are giving a wider picture." "I trust you to summarize it," I said. "I am not sure I want the wider picture yet." She smiled without humor. "We are talking about shutting down some lines for weeks or months," she said. "Full disinfection, structural checks on tunnels and pump rooms, maybe even permanent closures where the risk is too high." "I figured," I said. "Those things that came out of the tunnels," she said quietly, "they did not behave like people." "No," I said. "They did not." "It is not just here," she said. "This is happening in every city with old combined sewage and transit systems. The storm pushed everything to the surface. A lot of it was dead. Some of it was not as dead as it should have been." I looked at the flood door camera. The water behind it still touched the top. The inspection window was cloudy. "They say the bodies had that virus," she said. "The one that started as a mild respiratory thing and then in some people turned into longer lung problems. The one we never fully understood. Mix that with the bacteria and fungi that thrive in sewer systems, in the dark, in the warm water. You get something nobody planned for." "We reanimated our own waste," I said. "That is one way to put it." She nodded. "Going forward, we will have to treat every flood as a biohazard," she said. "Not just water and electricity, things in the water. Things that used to be people." "Do they think it will spread above ground?" I asked. "Only if people are careless," she said. "If they touch the water, if they do not follow decontamination procedures, if they hide symptoms. That is what the experts say. They say the organisms are fragile in air and light. They dry out. They stop moving. Underground, they can last longer." We both looked at the lower station feed. "I do not know if I believe that," she added. "But we have to act like it is true until we know otherwise." I sat in silence for a moment. "When I closed that flood door at 59th, I said, there were commuters still on the platform. Not many. Some. The police were there. Those things were climbing up from the tunnel. I do not know how many people made it onto the stairs before the door sealed. I do not know how many we locked in with them." "You moved the train away," she said. "You prevented those things from boarding. You kept hundreds of people in that train from being trapped in a tunnel with no exits." "I still saw their faces," I said. "The ones on the platform." "You will see them in your sleep for a while," she said. "That is the cost of this job on nights like this. But if you had not closed that door, we might be dealing with those things on platforms much higher up and in more stations. The hard decisions matter." She put her hand on my shoulder for a second, then moved on to the next dispatcher. I looked at the empty Brooklyn station again. The bag on the bench had not moved. Nothing had emerged from that tunnel mouth. If someone walked in there now, they might think it was just a normal late-night closure after a storm. I zoomed the camera. Slightly. At the edge of the track bed, near the tunnel, something drifted. It was just a scrap of cloth or a plastic bag caught on a metal fitting. It moved a little in the leftover water. It was mundane. Not everything that moved in a tunnel tonight was a threat. Some of it was still just trash. That thought calmed me more than I expected. Around 2 a.m., my replacement finally arrived. A younger dispatcher named Patel took my seat. I briefed him on the remaining active feeds and the status of every flood door in my section. I told him which trains were parked and which tunnels were fully submerged. We went through the handoff checklist line by line. "Anything else I should know?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "When in doubt, keep people away from the water and away from the tunnels. If you have to choose between equipment and lives, you choose lives. If you see movement on the cameras and you are not sure what it is, assume you do not want it getting to the surface." "Got it," he said. He sat down and adjusted the headset. I stepped back and looked at the wall of screens one more time. The big network map looked almost still. Only a handful of rectangles still moved, all on outer sections. Most lines were gray, marked out of service. The city looked quieter underground than it had in decades. I walked to the small observation window at the end of the hallway. From there, I could see a slice of the city. The rain had eased to a steady drizzle. Emergency vehicles clustered at some corners, lights flashing silently at this distance. Subway entrances near us had metal barricades and tape around them. Soldiers in protective gear stood watch with local police. My phone buzzed again. A second message from my ex-wife. They just showed something on the news. People coming out of the subway downtown barely able to walk, covered in growths. The announcer said they were not alive. Is that real? I stared at the text. Then I wrote back. Yes, I typed. It is real. Stay away from any place where water came up from underground. For now, stay inside, close basement doors. I will come by when I can. She replied with a simple, okay. I looked back at the city. The official line would be that this was a rare combination of heavy rain and old infrastructure, a freak event exposing hidden dangers in the underground system. That was partly true, but it missed the human part. The virus that had circulated earlier in the year, the lack of resources to track every death in every shelter, the bodies that ended up in systems not built to handle them. We had turned our underworld into a reservoir of slow decay. The storm had only opened the door. I knew what tomorrow would bring. Teams in protective suits would go into the tunnels slowly, carefully. They would pump out the water, swab surfaces, test samples. They would drain the flood doors and open a few cautiously. They would find bodies there, some still in positions that did not match stillness. They would shoot or burn anything that still moved. They would spray disinfectant on every surface they could reach. They would write reports in dry language that did not match the images they had seen. They would ask for our logs. They would ask to review my decision to close 59th Street's flood door when I did. They would ask how many people had been on that platform. I would give them the numbers we had. They would not match what I remembered seeing on the camera. Memory and data rarely matched exactly. Maybe, weeks from now, that line would reopen after deep cleaning. Maybe the door would stay sealed forever, become part of the forgotten map of abandoned tunnels. Either way, I would still see the moment the water and the bodies met at the edge of the platform. Play it in my head when I closed my eyes. I felt tired down to the bone. Behind me, the control room hummed on backup power. Voices murmured between consoles. Radios crackled with short, calm updates. The system was wounded but not dead. We still had a city above us that needed answers and transport and calm voices on the other end of radios. I took a slow breath and walked back to my station. Even though I was officially off the board, I sat next to Patel. "Do you need a hand?" I asked. He shook his head. "I have it," he said. "But you can sit there if you do not want to be alone." That was enough. I watched as the night crept toward morning. The storm kept draining. The strange movement on the cameras gradually slowed, then stopped as the water receded and the organisms lost their shelter and support. The first official statement from the city went out over television and emergency alerts just before dawn. Due to unprecedented flooding, it said, subway service in multiple cities has been suspended. There have been isolated incidents involving individuals emerging from underground in a severely decomposed and contaminated state. Authorities have contained these incidents. There is no need for panic. Residents are urged to avoid contact with floodwater and to stay away from subway stations and storm drains until further notice. No mention of what we had seen in detail. No mention of bodies that kept moving long after they should have stopped. No mention of flood doors closed on crowds and things pushing against steel from the other side. But I knew. The people in this room knew. The maintenance crews, the operators, the station agents, the emergency responders, they all knew. We had watched the first wave come out of the tunnels through our cameras. We had held the line with switches and power cuts and steel doors. We had seen what a mixture of disease and neglect and water could do to a human body. The day would come when trains would run again and people would stand on platforms without thinking about what lay beneath. They would look at their phones, listen to music, and complain about delays. I would still sit here, one floor above the city, watching the lines, listening to the radios. Every time a storm rolled over the East Coast and the first flood alert blinked on my screen, I would feel a grip in my chest. I would remember this night when the underground finally pushed back. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support keeps these creepypastas coming. Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and never ignore the feeling that something is watching.